Welcome back to another episode of the It Starts With You podcast. And today we are going to talk about one of my all-time favorite topics, which is all things speaking. So I personally do a lot of speaking, either through doing leadership development trainings, through keynote events for conferences or for different events. And I also help leaders really grow their own impact at work through speaking with more clarity and confidence, and helping aspiring speakers really grow their business and impact through paid speaking. So all things speaking, I am here for it. Here's the thing that I find so interesting. So public speaking is still at the top of fears for people. You've probably heard this before. According to one of the articles that I read, 76% of people have anxiety or fear of public speaking. And there was even this Forbes magazine article that the number one fear was public speaking and the second was death. Like, that is crazy. People are more afraid of having to get in front of a group of people and speak than they are of death, which is why I am so incredibly passionate about helping people with this, because not only do I personally love it, but when you find an opportunity to really find and discover and own and use your voice, it is so empowering and it is so impactful no matter where you're at or what you want to do. And I want to be able to help you eliminate some of that fear so that you can really convey your message and confidence in the way that you want to. So whether you're listening to this and you're somebody who works for organization or corporate, you're a leader, and you want to be more confident in speaking to groups and getting your message out there, or if you are someone who is an entrepreneur or a business owner and you really do speaking to grow your business, wherever you're coming at, I want to help you eliminate the fear and the thing that's really holding you back. Like, when I think about where that fear is really coming from, I think for a lot of people, it's the fear of being judged. It's what will others think? What if I mess up? What if I forget what I'm going to say? All the eyes are going to be on me. We care so much about what other people think. Or you think, every time I get in front of groups, like my hand starts to shake or my voice gets shaky or I start to sweat, and that's embarrassing, right? We care a lot about what other people think. And so if we feel like others don't like what we're going to have to say, or if it's something that we feel like we're not going to be able to deliver it good, we're going to shy away from putting ourselves in those positions. And a lot of people, I think, also have this fear from like a bad experience that they had when they had to speak to a class. Like, we think back to childhood, which is always fascinating, right? Because things from our childhood we carry with us into adulthood, and it came from somewhere, right? If you think about little kids, like, they usually are pretty outgoing. Not all kids, some are definitely more shy, but a lot of the times, they don't have the same like worry. Like, they kind of just goofy, or they say what they want, they dance around, right? And we slowly lose that, like it gets chipped away as we become adults. It's because of, judgment. We start to care what people think more. And so we're carrying around a lot of times bad experiences, maybe from childhood, if you spoke up and a kid laughed at you, or if you're pretty shy, or if you stuttered, or whatever it might be. Or in high school or college, when you had to take that, for most people, that dreaded public speaking course, if you forgot your words, or if they told you that you weren't a good speaker. And a lot of people then carry that around with them, right? And I've talked about this before, but as a certified coach, I'm trained in things based in neuroscience and positive psychology and cognitive behavior and all of those things, right? Based in our brains and how we learn. And we carry around these beliefs with us about ourselves, about who we are or who we aren't. And those create the actions that we take. Right? So if you have in your bag, like I've talked about this before, this bag of who you are that's like flipped over your shoulder, these beliefs about who you are or aren't, if you have in that bag that you are not a good speaker, you're not a good public speaker, then you are going to shy away from any opportunity to do it. It's this story that you have told yourself that you keep carrying around. Here's the thing. Just because it's a story that you've told yourself in the past does not mean it has to be true for you now. I'm going to say that again. Just because it's a story that you have told yourself in the past does not mean it has to be true for you now. Because that story is holding you back from what you really want to do. That story that story is holding you back from what you really want to do. Because you have this desire to speak up, to use your voice, to raise your hand in that meeting, to share your ideas, to get on stages. You have a desire to do it, but you are telling yourself that that's just not you, right? And so if you are, told to give a presentation to a group, or if you want to start doing speaking at events to grow your business, you most likely either don't do it or you're terrified to do it. And so you don't show up confident or like you have all of your thoughts put together. You don't put yourself out there because you have identified yourself as somebody who is not a good speaker. And we need to start by changing that identity. We need to change that story you're telling yourself. And here's the thing where I take a bit different approach, and we look at people have this fear. Like, there's a reason that so many people have this fear, and we can't just look at the surface level like, okay, here's some tips and techniques for becoming a better speaker. Well, I love doing that, and I definitely help people do that. We have to start from the root, right? So whenever someone comes to me and they want coaching on communicating or speaking, or even when I go and I do a lot of trainings for organizations or for teams on things around communication, right? One of the first things that we do is we start to really dig into that belief or that story that you are telling yourself about your abilities as a speaker. Because we have to go to the root first, right? We need to change from the inside out. I can't just give you speaking tips and then you'll be able to do it. I can't just have you watch me and then you can do it. You need to shift who you see yourself as, right? So if you had an orange tree and you wanted to change that orange tree into an apple tree, can you just change the fruit on the outside? No, you need to start at the roots, right? And that's the same thing for yourself. If you want to change who you are showing up as, who you're identifying as when it comes to being a speaker, you need to start first from within, right? So the first thing you need to do to really become this better, more confident speaker is to dig into all of the stories that you are telling yourself about why you aren't. Those childhood memories, those adult moments, right? All of the limiting thoughts that you put on yourself, things that people have told you before, all the comparison that you are making of yourself to people that are better speakers. I'm never going to speak like that. I don't have that much confidence. I'm not that outgoing. Right? You're never going to fully be able to step into and own your voice until you do that work. For me, I've always loved speaking. Ever since I was a kid, I would find myself in situations where I could speak to groups. I would put myself in those places. So presenting on things as a kid, I was always the one volunteering when we had group projects, to like present the topic to the class. And then in careers, I was always doing some type of speaking or doing training. So I was presenting to people, or I was in leadership and training and development. So I was going in and teaching people and training, facilitating. And now I do training and speaking as a career. So I've intentionally put myself, I think it was an innate passion and love of mine. And then I also have gotten a lot of practice and experience because I've intentionally put myself in those situations to be able to do it. And I love the energy of it. And that's why I want to help others too, because what I find is that there are so many people who actually have a desire to do it, but they're holding themselves back from it because they don't think they can. So I want to talk about some of the struggles and like mistakes that I actually see people make when it comes to public speaking. So the first one I see a lot is rambling and talking too much, right? When people get nervous, they just start to go and they just start to talk. And that's oftentimes when we just kind of trail off on our thoughts, or a lot of filler words get used. Right? It's because you get nervous, and as you start to get nervous, you talk faster and you ramble. So that's a big mistake I see. Another mistake I see is getting way too far into the weeds in the details that you're losing people. I work with people on this a lot. You feel like you need to give all of the information because you have so much information. You're so knowledgeable. The thing is you're probably going way too far into the weeds and you're losing people, right? They're checking their phone. They look like they have this like daze on their face. They're like zoning out. That's an indicator to you that you've lost them. You're not keeping them engaged because you might be going too far into the weeds and not keeping it focused on sort of this journey. The other thing I see people do is they make it all about themselves and not about the audience. It's not just about what you want to say, it's about what they need to hear. Another mistake I see is not having a story or taking the audience on the journey. It's either too choppy or too theoretical, not the right level of detail for the audience. People want to be engaged. People want to have their emotions engaged with. They want to be brought on this journey. No matter what it is you're talking about, we can actually turn it into sort of this story or this journey that you're taking people on with the appropriate amount of information. Another mistake I see people is not engaging people with stories or not engaging the audience, eye contact, moving throughout the room, really opening up opportunity to engage with that audience. And another thing with that is using voice and body language. I'll get into some tips for this in the next kind of section here, but not using an engaging way with your voice and with your body language that keeps the audience engaged. And then another one that I really want to highlight, the mistakes I see, is trying to show up like somebody else. Trying to show up like that person you saw talk that you thought was really engaging. It's one thing to have people to aspire to, but it needs to be authentic to you. The more that you show up, you can have your own confidence and your own authenticity that really can get portrayed. And with that, if you're an introvert, speaking is not just for extroverts. There are some really powerful people who speak who would identify themselves as introverted. And so that just because you're introverted does not mean you can't be a really powerful speaker. So those are some of the mistakes that I see. So what can you actually do then? What are some of the things that you can start doing to really increase your abilities as a public speaker or speaking up in any type of situation? The very first thing is dig into those old stories, right? Just like I said, you have to start there. Dig into those old stories about what you're telling yourself about you and your abilities as a speaker. What happened in childhood? What happened in adolescence? What's happened in adulthood that's getting in the way and blocking you? And what stories do we need to get rid of and step into a new identity and a new version of ourselves that's somebody who loves speaking, who's a great speaker, who's a confident speaker? Like, that's what we need to get to. The next thing is practice. You can't get beyond practice. Nobody gets good at something unless they practice. You can't expect yourself to be Tony Robbins or whoever it is you listen to or watch. They practice all the time. So practice. The only way we get better is practicing by intentionally putting yourself in situations to speak to groups. So I would recommend, depending where you're at, is start small. If you're someone who's really introverted and really uncomfortable speaking up, start just by speaking up more in meetings or in social settings. Start going to more networking events where you have to actually introduce yourself. I had a client one time who talked about how nervous she got in just that 2-minute introduction she had to do in those networking events, explaining who she was and what her role was. So we intentionally put her in situations where she had to do that and get more comfortable, and you can kind of build up that muscle, right? And then once you do that, once you start to build up, then start giving more presentations or offering to speak to groups, actually raising your hand for those opportunities, putting yourself in situations that you can actually be speaking to larger groups, right? And building into those bigger things. The other thing I would really say is get feedback, get help. You don't have to do it alone. So have someone who can listen to you or watch you and offer you tips, who can give you feedback, who can help you figure out how to put that talk or that presentation together. That could just be a friend, a coworker, someone on your team. It could be a business partner, whoever that could give you feedback, or you could actually work with somebody, a professional, a coach, and actually get support in that. But whoever it is, get feedback from people. Watch yourself on video, even though I know it is so uncomfortable. That's the only way you're going to know, oh, wow, I really said a lot, or I looked nervous, right? To really understand your body language. The other tip I have for you is work on your voice and body language. So when I talk about voice, you can really, there's so much said without actually the words specifically when you're speaking, right? So when it comes to voice, things like your tone and your pitch and your pace, you can vary those things to really create engagement for your audience and emphasize things. So for example, if you want to get people energized and really excited about something, you might start talking faster and a little bit louder and getting them really excited. And then what you can do is when you have another moment where you really want to re-engage them and have them really hone in, you can kind of quiet your voice a bit more. and you can slow your pace and you can pause. Do you see what I did there? Because it re-engages their attention. You're changing the way you use your voice, and it can be really engaging. And the same thing with body language. Your body language is really important as a speaker, and being mindful of that. How are you carrying yourself? Having your shoulders rolled back, taking up space and having this presence, making sure you're making eye contact with people. Those things are really important. And then the last thing, the tip I would say for really starting to improve your speaking is get clear on your own unique value and story and skills so that you can show up authentically. Figure out what is it that makes you unique and your strengths and skills to be speaking on and delivering on whatever it is that you're talking on. Right. And so when I'm working with clients, we dive into all of this and more. Like if you're an executive and you're wanting to really own your voice in the workplace, we're digging into your struggles and we're identifying your strengths and gaps, and we're practicing, and I'm giving you feedback to improve. And then we're practicing in the session, and then we're talking about how it went and how we can continue to improve. And we're going through these steps. And if you're someone who's looking to monetize speaking, like you're a business owner who's looking to grow your business with speaking or become a paid speaker, we're starting with digging into your stories and getting clear on your message and your strengths and really creating your signature talk or program, and then practicing and getting feedback, and then determining how to get you out there, how to position you as a speaker. And in all of these instances, we're really focused on how can we speak with more clarity and confidence and conviction that people want to hear us. So I want you to try these things out. I want you to work on this with your public speaking and start intentionally putting yourself in situations to work on these things. Because this is about using your voice. It's about owning your voice. It's about speaking up for the things you want and feeling confident to do that. No matter what setting you're in, no matter who you're with, you having the confidence to use your voice is one of the best things that you can do. And if you're somebody who wants to work on this, who actually wants support and a coach and a partner in this, send me a message and let's talk about coaching opportunities and how I help my clients do this. And if you're somebody who wants to become a paid speaker, if you really want to monetize your speaking, actually use speaking as your career, check out the free resource that I have for you. It's going to be in the show notes. It's the roadmap to becoming a paid speaker, all of the steps that I have done and that I take my clients through to really becoming a paid speaker. So have fun with this. Message me, and I would love to hear how you're starting to use these tips, and get out there and start using your voice.